The Convention of States project that Jackie mentioned, and that I'm involved in, and that we're going to be asking all of you to get involved in, is a project whereby we are going to be organizing in all 50 states. The project was announced in August of this year, 2013. And already we're organized in almost, or maybe slightly more than 40 states. And what we're doing is we're going to be lobbying the state legislatures to pass a resolution calling for an Article 5 convention. The purpose of which, to be generally stated, is to rein in power of the federal government. The COS Project is a movement that's led by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Michael Ferris. Dr. Ferris is the founder of Patrick Henry College in Virginia and the chancellor of that college. He is the founder of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. He is a constitutional scholar, and he's one of the few attorneys that has ever actually litigated Article 5 in front of the United States Supreme Court. The COS Project is supported by Citizens for Self-Governance. That's a conservative think tank headed by Mark Meckler, and he is one of the founders of the Tea Party Patriots National. Now, I mentioned we're going to be lobbying the state legislatures to pass a resolution for a convention. Let me talk a little bit about what that resolution says. It's asking for an Article 5 convention to be called for three purposes. The first purpose is to impose fiscal restraint on the federal government. Now, to most people, that means a balanced budget amendment. More than 70% in the polling today of the people want a balanced budget amendment. And there's actually a group out there called the Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force, which has already gotten resolutions for Article 5 convention passed in a number of states, depending on your count, somewhere between 18 and 20, to call a convention solely to propose a balanced budget amendment. The Convention of States Project resolution goes a little bit beyond that because of the concern that if we pass a balanced budget amendment, and only that, what's going to happen? Well, to balance the budget, Congress will have to do one of two things. They will either have to attack and do something with entitlements, and we all know they're not going to do that, or they're going to have to increase taxes. And so what would effectively be a good amendment could have a very unfortunate and unhappy result, and that would be a large tax increase. So the Convention of States Project goes further when it says impose fiscal restraint on Congress. It would allow this convention to go further and to perhaps propose amendments that would include tax reform in it, limitations on Congress's ability to raise taxes, possible limitations on the rate of taxation. And there's been a host of other proposals made that I won't go into today about how we can require Congress to essentially do its duty of passing a balanced budget. The second item that is promoted under the COS term limit is another item that more than 50%, the last poll I saw was over 60% of the country supports, and that's term limits. And specifically term limits on federal officials. That would include Congress. But it could also include future Supreme Court appointees and federal court judges in general in the future. And then the third item covered under the Convention of States resolution is one that we generally refer to as to restrain and limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. On its face, that may seem somewhat broad, but what it really is just a restatement and reaffirmation of 10th Amendment principles, that the powers that Congress have are the limited powers delegated to it under the Constitution. But what are some of the things that that particular aspect of the resolution could promote? Well, one thing is the equal application of laws to Congress as they make them apply to us. That seems to be universally supported. How about an end for folks like yourself that have to deal with county budgets? How about an end to unfunded mandates? or requirement like all the state legislators, or most of them have, or single-issue legislation. What does that mean? It means that you don't have legislation that has a bunch of earmarks tied into it, and the kind of earmarks that we have going on right now. Another possibility, you've heard a lot of people support the repeal of the 17th Amendment, which is the popular election of senators. I personally don't support the repeal of the 17th Amendment. But what I would like to see happen is possibly discussion over amendment whereby the states themselves could decide how their senators are chosen. It doesn't have to be uniform. Those two senators were intended under the Constitution to be there to represent the state legislatures. So if some states want to have popular election, that's fine. There may be state legislatures, however, who want to go back to the original process, which is appointment by them. So let's give them the option. As Jackie indicated, many of these proposals come within the scope of and are germane to the same Liberty Amendment proposal set forth in Mark Levin's recent book, The Liberty Amendments. The COS Project, you're going to be hearing more and more and more about it as it is gaining more and more momentum. It is something that many of the conservative commentators in this country have caught on to and support, if you want it. But the project has been endorsed so far by Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Mike Huckabee, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, and Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma. So today we're asking you to join with us in working together to lobby, in this case, our legislature at the state of Georgia, to help us lobby them to pass the CO resolution in the upcoming legislative session in 2015. As I said before, the mechanism under Article 5 is not a mechanism to fix and rein in our federal government. It is the mechanism which our tremendously wise founding fathers gave to us. If James Madison walked in right now and he heard all the complaints that all of us have from time to time about our federal government, the question he would ask us is this: why haven't you called an Article 5 convention? So we have only ourselves to look to. The time has now come to do that. As to Georgia, let me say this. Georgia was the fourth state in this country to ratify the United States Constitution back in 1788, I believe. It needs to be the first state that adopts the resolution that saves that Constitution. So, thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Jack.